Hey, Blue Eye Samurai, that's a show. You'd probably think I wouldn't have much to complain about, given how well received it is, and you'd be right for almost every single episode. There are issues here and there, but the things that stand out to me as bad in every other episode rarely have wide-reaching consequences for the story being told. They're isolated problems that only affect the scene they show up in. However, Episode 8 is another story entirely, and it's honestly impressive just how little it makes sense considering the quality of everything preceding it. The premise is simple. Now that she is aware of Fowler's plan to overthrow the Shogun, Mizu is going to sneak into the castle and use Ringo to help get Akemi out before making another attempt on Fowler's life. You'd think not too much can go wrong.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. Akemi is coming with me.
To start with, I will say it has never and will never stop bothering me that swords can casually stab through two sides of samurai armor. It doesn't bother me that Seki gets this kill that way because he's clearly talented enough to have gotten it regardless. But why not go for a decapitation, or a stab to the throat, or have him aim somewhere the armor leaves unprotected? It wouldn't require more effort in animation, just for the effort that's gone into this to go elsewhere instead. Armor is supposed to be free combat tension because it requires your unarmored opponents to fight intelligently in order to win, but they just don't. Why bother showing these people wearing armor if it does nothing? At the very least, it consistently does nothing. If it suddenly started working in some scenes, then I'd have a serious problem, but right now it's just a trope that bothers me. Seki breaks Akemi out, who then gets directions from Mizu to find Ringo, so it's fitting that we cut to him next, breaking in through the sewers.
You've been training.
Taigen!
Oh, and so it begins. Now that's what you call convenience. This is the home of the Shogun of Japan. We saw it earlier, it's huge. And out of the... Sorry, how many samurai are posted here again?
Thousands of men guard the Shogun's castle.
Ringo just happens to run into Taigen instantly. Literally the second person he sees. At the very least, Mizu was looking specifically for Akemi, and if you know she disappeared suspiciously after going to warn her father of Fowler's attack, then the prisons are a safe bet. But this is just luck, and speaking of luck, throughout their entire conversation, no guards or servants enter the area. They talk for a good minute next to an unconscious body and no patrols pass by despite the fact we were just shown the area is lively with guards. Not a massive deal on its own, but what is a massive deal is that Taigen hides this body by dragging it from here to here.
Hiding place achieved!
Oh yeah, before he was right out in the open. Now though, now he's hidden. Throw him down the well, please. You might be thinking, well, Taigen obviously doesn't want to risk killing the guy. But that's not true, because he kills people to get to the Shogun a few minutes from now. He definitively values his mission above the lives of the guards, but he just doesn't deal with this guy properly. If they launched right into their attack plan, this might be less conspicuously bad in terms of the timeline. But they climb all the way to the top of this tower, talk for a good minute, climb all the way back down, and not only does the guard not wake up, but the body also isn't discovered. Just because you cut from here to here doesn't mean they didn't have to get there. Not a single guard passed by this point the entire time. I might have been a little more charitable and assumed they must have hidden the body off screen if they'd just cut to the tower and Taigen hadn't touched the body. But what is this if not an attempt to hide the body? It seems the show legitimately believes this is a good enough hiding place to excuse him not being found.
Ringo, didn't you say you wanted to be great? What do you do when you get exactly what you prayed for?
Ringo changes plans and decides to help Taigen warn the Shogun instead of waiting for Akemi by the sewers like he was supposed to. And it's at this point that I have to wonder, was that really the extent of your plan? Stand by the sewers for minutes on end and just hope no other guards question why he's there? I'm going to assume he would have done a better job hiding the body than Taigen, but he's not exactly inconspicuous. However, I won't rag on this anymore since we never actually get to see how the plan would have gone since he ditches. Taigen tells Ringo he's been trying to figure out how to get close to the Shogun to warn him, and the only reason he hasn't been able to is because of the amount of guards.
8 guards, archers. How do we get around them all?
Following in Mizu's footsteps, they try and take the guards by surprise and attack the main gate head-on. And together, they defeat 8 guards appointed to protect the Shogun of Japan in 5 seconds. Notice that I had to slow the footage down here because it literally took longer for me to say they won than it did for them to actually win.
If I tried to reach him alone, I'd be dead in 7 steps.
Are you sure about that?
Even Mizu couldn't defeat 8 enemies in 5 seconds. And this right here is just some dreadful choreography to allow them to win so quickly. You can't just cut to this shot and expect me to believe that Taigen and Ringo came out of nowhere and took the guards unaware. You showed us the landscape a minute ago. It's an open courtyard with nobody in it. The guards would have seen them coming from miles away, which is obviously why they're posted here. It's a good spot to defend. But for some reason, they take no action, which is what allows these two to wipe through them so quickly. The first two don't even draw their swords in time, but the guards behind them are somehow even more embarrassing. The one on the left draws his sword, but just allows Taigen to run right past unchallenged, while the one on the right doesn't even draw his sword for the entire shot. I don't know which is worse. Going further back, at the very least, this guy has had his sword out the whole time, though he does just allow Ringo to bash his head in unchallenged. But the other guy is only just drawing his sword as Taigen cuts him down. Like, were these guys high? Were they drunk? How did you get appointed to protect the fucking Shogun? Like, yeah, this show is action-packed, and I understand that some encounters will have less time devoted to them than others. But if you don't have the time to choreograph something well, just cut it. Just cut this shot out and begin here. Let us infer that they must have overcome the guards with their skill, despite their disadvantage, rather than showing me they only won because the guards let them. I will say it also bothers me that this show tries to leave doubt as to whether Taigen actually killed anyone, because his blade is still clean after the first group is defeated. There are 2 explanations for this. Either it's just a little animation fuck-up, or the showrunners were uncomfortable with him explicitly killing guards. Even though this doesn't make much difference, because blood or not, there's only one possible outcome when you cut across someone's body with a blade and they fall down. Unless, of course, I'm supposed to believe these guys are miming, which, I'm gonna be honest, don't think that was the intention. The only reason I bring it up is because it's slightly immersion breaking, since I can't unnotice it, and now neither can you. You're welcome, by the way.
What is wrong with you?
I want you to suffer as I have suffered.
And I see no reason why the showrunners felt the need to obfuscate this. I think the extreme urgency of the situation would justify his actions if he were to kill the guards, but now it just stands out as odd. Did he kill them? I don't fucking know. Anyway, having made it past the brain trust, Taigen and Ringo run in to warn the Shogun, and this time the guards try tackling them. They decide, upon seeing 2 armed intruders make for the Shogun at speed, that instead of drawing their own swords, they're going to run at them and grab them. Oh, sorry, wait a minute, it looks like Taigen has sheathed his sword for no reason, so that this will actually work. Oh, once again, just top-notch choreography. I just love in fights when characters handicap themselves so they can almost get defeated for drama points instead of things just making sense and being satisfying. You could have just had a back-to-back armed standoff until Taigen sees the Shogun. Why do this? It just makes him look like a spanner.
Taigen!
Where the fuck did that come from? Where did you get an arrow from? None of those guards had bows or arrows. We could clearly see they all had swords. You can't just materialize weapons out of thin air if your characters get into a tricky spot. Please put some fucking effort into actually resolving the conflicts you write. This is the final episode of the season, and it's not leaving a good taste.
Let me warn the Shogun first!
Also, that was completely unnecessary when you see how close Taigen and Ringo actually are to the Shogun. Honestly, it's kinda weird that no one noticed them before.
I'm not an assassin. Come with a warning to save the Shogun's life. Only look. Then kill me.
Okay, you might want to prepare yourself for this. The lookout that you have to tell to look out. His one fucking job is to look out from a watchtower for approaching threats. And he just isn't doing it until he's told to by the Shogun's son. Oh my oh boy. Hi. That belongs in a parody. That belongs in a Monty Python sketch. That is utterly fucking absurd, and they put it in the episode. Are you starting to see why it feels like the writers just gave up a little bit in this episode? This guy was just chilling, listening to his banging tunes, and failed to notice an entire enemy army marching in formation with banners down the main fucking thoroughfare of the city for what must have been at least 20 minutes, until he was told to look. They are walking. They have walked this entire distance and he saw nothing, nor did any of the other lookouts. What I think makes this so blatantly absurd is that he's using a telescope. Mate, you don't need a fucking telescope. You could have cataracts and still make this out. How they haven't been seen yet is anyone's guess. Do all the sentries around this castle have to be specifically told to do their job before they're allowed? How do you miss their approach, and how do you expect me to believe that he missed their approach? Like, I know the enemy has guns, but imagine how much better prepared this castle would be if they'd had that extra 20 minutes of warning. But no. The scouts don't scout until the Shogun's son tells them to.
Fowler.
Oh, good grief. It looks even more absurd from a distance. How does any human with functioning eyeballs miss this? The massive bright red banners, the dust. Mizu can even hear them marching from this far away. Oh my god. Why couldn't this season just be good? Why did it have to have this shit in it? It was so close. This was the last hurdle. It was the final fucking episode, and it just could not make sense. It just couldn't give me one good season. Oh god. Oh, Game of Thrones Season 8 Battlefield Strategy making a triumphant fucking return, I see. Catch the enemy off guard by putting your swordsmen outside the walls to fight the fucking riflemen. The Shogun was told they have guns. What are you doing? You have walls and a gate. Use them. But they don't, and so, as Fowler and his men are using American karate, this ends about as well as you might expect.
Fire, please.
You numbskulls earned that death, Jesus Christ. Also, I get that it's an artistic choice, it's for the shot, but how do samurai archers not realize when they're out of range? Fowler and his men obviously know because that's why they stopped where they did, so how do the Shogun's samurai, people who have trained in combat their entire lives, not know the limits of their own weaponry? Small issue, moving on. But you know what isn't a small issue? The fact that now the opposing army and its mostly unarmoured leader are in range, the samurai have stopped firing. Launch a volley at the leader. He's on a horse. He's a prime target. You could end this coup before it's barely begun. Why aren't you trying? We saw the swordsman get mowed down, and you could assume the archers followed suit, but we saw nothing to support that. There are natural assumptions the audience will make in every scene of a show, but I think this is stretching that idea too much. When you cut from this to this, the natural assumption is they climbed down and avoided any guards on their way to charge the gate, and you buy it because that doesn't require skill. For these riflemen to, in one volley, kill every single archer that fired at them is an impressive feat. And I just need to see some bodies, that's it. I just need to see that the archers have also been killed. And then there's the obvious criticism that Fowler is now presenting himself to enemy archers for no reason, so there goes a little bit of his intelligence. Oh, and we just don't address those archers. I guess they just disintegrated out of shame when the enemy started moving on to the next gate. Oh god, the rocks. No, I've remembered. Oh god. Oh, oh no. They were gonna throw rocks at people with guns who are miles away. Fuck me, the pinnacle of samurai siege tactics, ladies and gentlemen. You do this when your enemy are assaulting the gates, you morons. The enemy have ranged weapons. Why would they get close enough for you to hit them with boulders? Go and get a bow. Oh, and look, it's the gate that Taigen and Ringo attacked. Guys, don't worry, you don't need guns for this one. If you just run fast enough, I'm sure you'll get by just fine.
Ready the oil! Go!
The oil? 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 What use is oil gonna... Ugh. You were there when they shot your men. Both times, actually. Not really sure how you survived that one now that I think about it, but the point is, you've seen firsthand twice what they can do. Obviously archery is still your best chance. What exactly is boiling oil going to do to people who are 30-40 meters away? Is this the feudal shot put team? Even if they could throw the oil that far, they're still getting shot in the face. And where have your archers gone? You had them. I saw that you had them. One volley here and Fowler is dead.
Even if they get close, they'll never push through.
We just saw 6 guards go up there. 4 on the side this guy went up. There are obviously going to be way more samurai up there since they're preparing to defend it, and we know the Shogun has thousands defending him. But we have at least 6 confirmed. You can't just play 3 pistol sound effects and call it a day. How did he do this? And I say 3, but it's 3 total. He shoots the captain in the head, and then they play 2 more pistol effects before he opens the gate. Did he line 3 guards up each time like he's playing Sniper fucking Elite? No. And obviously on a gate this big you're gonna have more than 6 people defending it. Did he have like 20 extra guns we just never heard him fire or something? Is he hiding a Beretta in his kimono? How did he do this? Even if there were only 6 people up there, you'd probably need 6 shots at a bare minimum assuming you were accurate enough to get a kill per bullet. Which isn't even a guarantee because adrenaline can carry people through all kinds of wounds for a few seconds, even if the shot was lethal, which is all the guards would need to kill this guy. And now I'm starting to wonder why this guy was even needed. The other gates would have obviously also been locked, but they presented no issue to Fowler's men, and there's nothing in the show to suggest that insiders were responsible for opening them. In fact, having this last gate be the only one that explicitly required a man on the inside to get past suggests that the others were easily bypassed. Why is this one special? Obviously different gates are going to be built different, but the problem I have is the inconsistency of it. Are these gates an obstacle or aren't they? You can't have it both ways depending on what payoffs you want, without justifying why this gate is suddenly a challenge to get past. And there is yet another issue I have with this, which is Fowler's men have killed probably like 50 or 60 samurai. This is the Shogun's castle. We have, from the mouth of the Shogun's own advisor, confirmation that there are thousands of men stationed here. Where are these thousands exactly? Are they in the room with us right now? I was originally going to steelman this moment and argue that there's no reason to believe the Shogun would just casually have a standing army of thousands, but I can't. Because we have a character with inside knowledge literally confirming the opposite. Apparently there are thousands of samurai here just ready to go.
Thousands of men guard the Shogun's castle.
So that was a fucking lie.
Okay. Once again, the revered samurai stratagem of placing your fighters outside the walls to charge directly into rifle fire.
You just keep hitting the fucking home runs!
Like, were you guys trained wrong as a joke?
I'm bleeding, making me the victor.
So, Fowler breaks in, the Shogun gets killed, a couple other people, but just before the son can be executed...
Kill him.
I am fine with Mizu having an incredible level of skill. I am not fine with her being actually superhuman. If she'd started dodging in general and he'd missed because he wasn't expecting her to move the way she did, I would have been fine with it. She literally does that in the first scene of the first episode, and I'm fine with it because she catches Hachi off guard by moving as quickly as she does. But here, if you slow it down, she reacts to the firing of that gun. If she can do this, if her brain works this fast and can control her body that well, she should not be losing any fight ever. This is just a really bad Matrix reference. It is so ill-placed. The bullet dodge is obviously not something humans can do. The bullet dodge wasn't even something the people in the Matrix could do.
I've never seen anyone move that fast.
Wasn't fast enough.
The best humans can do is dodge in anticipation of a shot and hope it makes the shooter miss. If Mizu had held her hand up and just stopped the bullet mid-air, it would have been no more ridiculous than this moment. And what makes this worse is that in order to allow this to even happen, the other two riflemen just don't fire despite literally being ordered to by their leader.
Do it.
If you're in an army and your commander gives you an order to kill an enemy combatant who just attacked him with a spear, it's pretty reasonable to expect the soldiers might just follow that order if they value their own lives. But these two melons just stand there like they're on standby. Do something, please. If you want to reference The Matrix with a normal human character, don't choose the fucking bullet dodge. I would have thought that was common sense. Choose the triple kick, choose Trinity's shotgun kick, or the cartwheel grab, or any other famous piece of fight choreography from that movie, because there's plenty to choose from. And then this scene just has the typical bad, confusing choreography you get in all kinds of action media that feature guns but don't want to deal with the combat dynamic that guns present, where the enemies just move towards the hero with their gun outstretched so they can be disarmed and killed instead of stepping back and taking a shot with their ranged weapon. The last we saw, there were two guys back here who didn't fire, but one of them has just moved forwards for no reason so he can be killed. The same thing happens again here as well, but only because they reused the same fighting animation for this shot. To compare, because they're referencing it here, the lobby scene in The Matrix has a strong mix of ranged combat and hand-to-hand, but it still treats the SWAT team as a clear threat to be dealt with, rather than a set of mannequins to be knocked over by the heroes. Neo and Trinity don't just run at the SWAT team head-on and beat them to death. The first thing the both of them do is run for cover, and the entire team opens fire as a result. Trinity manages to get slightly further up the room than Neo, but the result is the same. They're waiting for an opportunity. Trinity waits for the guard suppressing her to reload, but still ends up jumping right back into cover because the guard down the room is now pressuring her instead. It's weird. It's almost like they're a team, and they not only don't want to be killed, but they don't want their friends to be killed either. Huh, what a concept. From there, Neo waits until there's a break in the fire and he can leave safely to start charging up the room. And Trinity makes her next move when the guard previously keeping her pinned down starts taking shots at Neo instead because he seems the bigger threat. But even after she gets up close and kills two more, the next thing she does is once again jump right back into cover. Because standing out in the open when your opponent has a gun is not a winning strategy, believe it or not. The same thing happens when Neo does his cartwheel. He moves from cover to cover and once again waits for a break in the fire before coming out. Here, it doesn't seem like the word cover was even used when choreographing this scene, but the funny part is, it isn't really even necessary because the showrunner's solution to the characters being out in the open is to simply not have their enemies fire. And you may be wondering, well, how the hell do you solve this problem when there's no good cover in this room? One simple solution is body blocking. Mizu and Taigen need to move quickly, but if they start engaging a rifleman at the right angle and keep him between them and the enemy, it's perfectly believable they wouldn't take a shot if there's a chance they could hit their ally. And what's annoying is the show nearly accomplishes this with both Mizu and Taigen, but unfortunately they're at the wrong angle for it to make sense. If they were just turned 90 degrees, I could praise it, but as it stands, the guys in the back are just choosing to do nothing despite having clear shots as their allies are killed. This whole episode just feels rushed, like the writers and the animators just took a holiday, or they didn't have enough time or something. It's conspicuously worse than the rest of the show, and it's hitting pitfalls the other episodes avoided. Episode 6 demonstrates a clear awareness of the massive threat a gun presents to someone wielding a melee weapon. Meanwhile, this episode demonstrates nothing but ignorance. Everyone in this scene should be constantly moving. Mizu and Taigen should be fighting to keep someone between them and the rifleman, and the enemy should be moving around the room, trying to get a clear shot. But instead it's treated as if the riflemen have swords and aren't currently able to easily kill both Mizu and Taigen despite having kill shots the whole time. Oh my god. Fowler has to grab the gun because his highly efficient fighting force are suddenly worse than useless. And that's another annoying trope as well. The enemy henchmen are incredibly effective against all the faceless goons, but as soon as our heroes show up, they become stormtroopers. With Mizu's level of skill, I'm fine with her being able to win, but she doesn't have to overcome anything. They're just letting her kill them. Oh, why do I even bother? Instead of trying to keep an armored body between her and her opponents, she turns her back in the exact opposite direction to the way she should be facing, and then acts surprised when someone takes a shot at her.
You were supposed to wait outside.
Oh, apparently her superhuman reflexes transferred to Ringo for a second. Oh, so they do know how to appropriately reference the bullet dodge. Then why did we need this insane shit? Mizu, what was that? You signaled Taigen to attack and then hung him out to dry. Why did it take you that long to jump in? You're a killer, you're fast, you're deadly. You should have cracked his skull open while he was kneeing Taigen in the face. Is there any reason that Fowler doesn't just run Taigen through here? Doing that guarantees a one-on-one, regardless of if Taigen dies, and that's far more valuable than just using him as a temporary shield, which, let's not forget, is also going to fight back at the first opportunity he gets. For some reason, Mizu just didn't back up. The dumbass held her weapon outstretched for 5 seconds so Fowler could take advantage. But it's worse than that, because any swordsman with half a brain knows that if an attack isn't aimed at you, you obviously don't need to block it. And Fowler decides for some reason to attack her weapon, not her. For someone as skilled as Mizu, this is a golden ticket to victory. All she needs to do here is withdraw her weapon and Fowler will miss, which creates an opening she can take advantage of. If she's fast enough, which until 5 seconds ago she was, she could have probably injured or broken his sword arm, which is pretty much game. Oh my god, now he tries to kill Taigen. Are you He chooses not to kill Taigen when it would have cost him nothing, but after knocking Mizu down with a monstrous fucking boot to the face, instead of taking advantage of the opening, he turns his back to her to kill Taigen. You know what? Why don't we take a little break here, just for a minute to do something fun. We're gonna play Spot the Difference. Don't worry, it's not a hard game. There's only one difference, and I'll give you a reasonable amount of time to find it. Let's play some relaxing music in the meantime. Ready? Time's up. Oh, do I even need to say it? Do I even need to say anything? Taigen's katana just disappears between shots. So we not only have randomly materializing weapons, we also have randomly disappearing ones. And they obviously did it because they needed to ensure Taigen didn't have an opportunity to kill Fowler here. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if he'd stabbed Taigen earlier, but they didn't do that, so to make sure he couldn't kill Fowler, they took his sword away. And it makes this moment worse as well. If Taigen had had his sword, he'd have actually been able to defend himself here.
But no!
And the worst part of this is that they had a perfect excuse for Taigen to lose his sword already set up, and they didn't use it. Fowler breaks Taigen's initial assault by cutting his hand. I would probably still criticize it as being a bit convenient if he'd lost his sword because of this, because he's holding it in both hands, but it's a lot better than just having it disappear. Wow, who could have seen that coming? Not the guy who turned his fucking back, if you can believe it. Mizu stabs him, and Taigen tries to break free to no avail. However, apparently, Fowler forgot he was holding a sword here. He could have killed Taigen easily, so the only explanation is he chose not to for some reason, despite literally trying to kill him seconds ago. Man, it didn't blow me away the first time round, but looking back at this fight... Ugh. Wait, Taigen's sword is back! Of course it is. Why am I surprised? Oh, no, no, no. Oh, it's horrible. After beating the both of them so bad they're grounded, he runs away.
You disgust me!
Taigen is helpless right now, and Mizu is unarmed, yet Fowler runs off. Plot armor, thy name is Spontaneous Cowardice. Obviously Fowler wants to survive. He's not the kind of character who would never retreat. He's a schemer, and if he needs to, he'll run and bide his time. But he's winning here. Why would he run when he's almost got them both and we know him to be extremely powerful and sadistic? He literally stands his ground against Mizu minutes from now and delights in the pain he's causing her when things are far more dangerous than they are now.
Your bones break like a woman's.
So you can't make the argument that he's only running because he's concerned for his life. He stands his ground later when he could just keep running away, so why does he choose not to finish them off? He could just poke her with the pointy end and she wouldn't be able to stop him. She's grounded and not moving. Fowler has every advantage right now, but he just runs and lets her arm herself again. Wait. You're probably gonna need that, Mizu. And you can't say her not using Taigen's katana is because of the promise she made to herself last episode, because not only does she literally use bladed weapons in this episode to fight guards and Fowler himself, but she literally uses a katana to kill a guy. When she said, "I don't deserve a sword, not yet," she was talking about a sword made by Master Eiji. Why did she throw the sword away? Does she want to lose? He's got a sword. There's one right there. You'd think the natural response is to pick it up, but no. She does the literal opposite. It's worse than the opposite. The opposite would just be leaving it there. She picks it up, recognizes what it is, and throws it away. Why could you not just do the final fight justice? It should not be that hard. I think all we can conclude from this is that Mizu is suffering some sort of stroke right now that's impairing her ability to fight properly and think properly. At least that's my fucking headcanon. Also, there goes Taigen's sword again. So she goes looking for him with no weapon. He gets a surprise attack, and there we go. The absolute worst part of this episode has begun. This fire. As this episode and this fire progressed, it almost completely turned me off to the episode's main conflict. This fire starts instantly. It's like the entire room was doused in petroleum, and if it was just a set piece for this fight that gets put out before it can spread, or if it did spread but wasn't used the way it is, maybe I would accept it. But make no mistake, this fire is the entire reason that Fowler's army is defeated. It literally resolves the main drama of this episode, and it simply would not have started or spread this quickly. It gets from this room to the entire fucking city in a matter of minutes. And when I say the entire city, I really mean it.
He's crazy.
He knows for a fact that Mizu has been killing her way across Japan. He knows she killed the Four Fangs, she mutilated Heiji, and he was literally there when she climbed his tower. And he obviously knows the kinds of defenses he had in place, so he knows she has already overcome odds which for any normal person would be insurmountable, and he still maintained his composure when fighting her for the first time.
Look at you. No one's ever made it up half this far before.
Which is why him suddenly being scared rubs me the wrong way, because he bounces back completely a couple minutes later and is just back in murder mode. Him being shocked, I understand, makes sense. Him being scared? We already know Fowler doesn't scare this easily, but honestly, there's bigger issues to come, so I'm moving on. If it does any damage to his character, it's barely noticeable compared to those issues. I just wanted to mention it as an odd inconsistency. Based on what I've seen of him so far, I don't see why he would be scared here versus literally every other time he's fought Mizu or someone else.
Oh, you found your friend!
Yeah, her not giving a shit about the fire and just wanting to kill him is intimidating, but it's Fowler. The man kills his own children for the sake of efficiency.
I thought I accounted for all my bastards over the years. They lined the tunnel you came in.
I don't think this would frighten him that much, but as I already said, whatever. Bigger problems to come, moving on. Keep in mind, it's been about a minute or two since that fire started, because I doubt Mizu has been chasing Fowler around the castle for half an hour. How the hell did it spread so quickly? I don't care if it's based on a historical event, you still have to present it believably. You can't just cut from a small fire confined to one room to literally half the city being on fire.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
I wouldn't be that bothered by the fire spreading so quickly if it were consistently destructive, but as we'll see later, it doesn't... You know what? We'll see later. I'm going chronologically. Also, what the hell is this? I was only half joking about the episode being rushed before, but stuff like this continues to tip the scales. Did they actually have to rush this episode to get it out in time or something? Because this surely would not be a difficult problem to fix if somebody had caught it. Oh, and this bit of the episode is hilarious as well. And wouldn't you know it, it happens because of the fire. Seki and Akemi run onto the outer castle bridge, and she has the idea to lock the soldiers in. Look at this landscape. Look at how close the soldiers are to these two and how far it is to the gate once you round the corner. In the time it takes them to decide to lock the gate, get to it and actually close it, the soldiers would already be through. But ignoring that, and also ignoring the fact that castle gates obviously do not lock from the fucking outside, they don't even close them in time. The show thinks I'm going to believe that one elderly man and one noble woman who runs like this are going to be strong enough to hold this door for even a second against dozens of desperate samurai all fighting for their lives. I would still find this hard to believe if it was Ringo and Taigen holding that door, but it's Seki and Akemi. Now, Seki is probably still pretty strong despite his age, but Akemi is almost less than useless here. And how he locks it as well, that isn't locked. If that soldier hadn't tried shooting Seki, he wouldn't have even been able to do this in the first place, but if he's dead, his body is gonna fall, meaning the other soldiers can just reach through and lift the gun. Apparently they ran out of action points though, because none of them do it. And what the hell is killing them? The fire is raging, but it wasn't near them before the door was closed, and you can clearly see in this shot that they're well away from the castle, so the roof collapsing on them isn't too much of an issue either. It sounds like something is falling on them, but what? They could be burning to death, but they're in an open courtyard with nothing around. Is the fire just that intense that it somehow reached them despite it not having reached them 5 seconds ago? How did this kill them? I just want to know. At most, I would have thought they'd suffocate. There's no other immediate threat that could have killed them this quickly. And even then, suffocation would take longer, and also wouldn't have them screaming, and there wouldn't be collapsing noises if they were suffocating. Basically, I have no idea what the show wants me to think here, it's just confusing. Moving on. So Seki gets shot, and it's at this point I realise this episode is allergic to making sense. I have to assume he was shot by someone from beyond that door who put their gun through, because there's literally nowhere else it could have come from. Okay. Akemi then spends a full minute crying over him in the middle of the bridge, not trying to drag him away or anything, and no one takes a shot at her. What happened to the guy who shot Seki? Did he just decide like, oh, well, that's my turn over? And how come these two were even here in the first place? The last time we actually saw Seki and Akemi, they had been told explicitly by Mizu to get to the North Sewer.
Go to the North Sewer. Ringo will be there waiting to take you out of the city. Stop for nothing.
This was before Fowler's army had even reached the gate, and in the many minutes since then, and after all the time it took the fire to spread, they never reached the sewer and apparently decided instead they were going to go to the main gate? Now, Ringo isn't at the sewer to take them out, but why didn't we see them go there? Just a 2-3 second shot of them arriving, looking confused, and then Seki says, let's get out the main gate. Because if they were always trying to get out the front gate, then how the hell did it take them so long to get there? The way this should probably play out is Mizu tells them to leave through the sewer, they go there, but Ringo is gone. They won't know the way down there, so they decide to go for the main gate instead, but in the time it takes to go there, Fowler's army has been seen and the gates are now locked. From that point, it follows that their only real chance of escape would be well after Fowler's army has breached the castle. You would barely need to add anything, and it means I'm no longer confused about what these two were doing the whole time to have only made it here. Oh, and in case you missed it, since some of this episode's problems can quite easily slip by people given how fucking many of them there are, not a single one of the hundreds of soldiers in Fowler's army have been left to guard the main gate to the Shogun's castle that they just breached minutes ago. If there had been even one, then Seki and Akemi can no longer just casually run out like they do. Honestly, that sounds like a better justification for Seki to get shot rather than having an anonymous sniper take him out but spare Akemi for no reason. Why not have Seki rush the gate and take bullets killing the guards there only to die shortly after? His death is so cheap. I hate it. I didn't realize that I disliked it this much until I had to talk about it. We need Seki to die. Okay, how? He just gets shot. Okay, by who? A guard, probably. So how does Akemi survive if she just does? Next scene. Put some fucking effort in, please. Oh, not you two again.
Oh god, it's Pinky and Perky.
Well, that's mighty lucky. If Fowler had attacked with his sword, then she'd be dead twice over, since... wait, where did Fowler's sword go? He had a katana when he left the room, he ran away with it, and it's gone when he gets to the stairs. There's another one! Sir, a second katana has disappeared in episode 8. Before this moment, the stakes were set for this fight. Although Fowler is retreating from Mizu, he is armed with the deadlier weapon and is incredibly strong. Mizu, meanwhile, has a dagger, superior skill, supposedly, and her resolve to finally get this done after failing once already. On paper, that sounds like the beginning of an interesting fight, but when it begins, those stakes are thrown out the window, which undermines the dramatic tension of the episode. My investment and immersion in the conflict I've been presented with is intrinsically tied to the progression of events in and around that conflict. If you establish something exists at the end of a particular exchange, then I'm expecting that thing to show up again later when it's needed. Because if it doesn't, then my investment takes a hit because the show just changed the rules without justification, and now I don't know if I can trust it to be consistent in future. Fundamentally, people watch dramatic shows like this to be told a story with stakes built on cause and effect. If cause and effect isn't working, there are no stakes, which means the audience can't get invested because dramatic setups could just be resolved by the writers teleporting weaponry in and out, depending on what they want to happen in each scene. In The Raid 2, Rama's battle with Eika's assassin is a hard-fought back and forth until Rama gets a clean headshot and rocks him. From then on, although the assassin still puts up a fight, it's much more one-sided. He's constantly on the back foot and Rama is dominating. However, earlier it was set up that he carries blades with him, and there's no reason he wouldn't also be armed now, which is why it's satisfying to the audience that he pulls them out when the fight starts to turn. And once he pulls them out, they don't just disappear after Rama gets cut. He uses them as effectively as he is able right up until the very last moment, and Rama is forced to constantly retreat as he waits for an opportunity to disarm him. This is an example of the stakes changing as a result of prior setups being paid off. This is an example of the stakes being changed because the writers didn't want to pay off what they had set up. They didn't want another duel, they wanted it to descend into unarmed combat, but they couldn't be bothered justifying how Fowler would lose his weapon in the same way other, better choreographed fight scenes do. In short, it's lazily written, lazily choreographed, and it ruins the final confrontation of this season. What a shame. If there had at least been a pretense for why Fowler had lost his weapon, like a roof beam collapses on him and he loses his katana to the blaze, then I could have bought it, but there isn't, there's nothing. It just disappears into the void.
Lock the gate. They saw your father die. They should have opened their stomachs when they had the chance. This is what it means to rule.
What is the big deal here? Am I missing something? Do I not understand how fire works? Smoke rises, and this is an underground stone tunnel they've probably been running in for many minutes, based on how much has happened between the scene where they escape and this scene. How is the fire gonna reach them exactly? All this moronic Bint has actually done is make her son and her family permanent enemies in all these lords who should obviously survive this. You can't just show an orange glow and call it a day. The fire would never reach them. Fire doesn't burn stone, contrary to what some shows seem to believe. What is it feeding on in order to grow? I have no idea, but apparently this fire is hot enough that it can somehow light stone on fire. Just keep that in mind. What the Are you serious? What happened to all the guards? Where are the bodies? If they burned, the ground would be littered with them. Did they just give up and leave? How did not one of them realize the door was being held almost closed by a single musket? And why did none of them come back after the gate burned down? Taigen just casually strolls past after the fire has burned through. How did he survive getting out of the building and all the way out through the main gate when everyone else in the opposing army has either died/disappeared? Actually, the latter is far more likely because I've yet to see a single body anywhere. This isn't something that you can hand-wave. He's basically unscathed by the fire and all the bad guys are gone. If only he had this kind of plot armor during his fights. Well, I guess he kinda does. He can't be killed, but it definitely doesn't save him from getting his ass kicked. And going back to the fire, it is ravenous, as was just established. It's destroying everything in its path. It is apparently fierce enough to cross open gravel courtyards, moats, and burn down gatehouses in a matter of minutes. It does not set fire to the bridge.
I'm gonna warm this one up.
Nor does it even touch Taigen, yet Fowler's army is defeated by it. And whether Fowler's army actually died or just ran off, that doesn't really matter. The point is they've still been routed by it. Yet Taigen is unscathed. It poses no threat to him somehow. The underground stone tunnel with all the no-name lords catches fire. The wooden bridge does not, because it has a protagonist on it. Now, narratively, it's pretty obvious why they made this choice, and it's because they wanted this visual to represent the diverging life paths Taigen and Akemi are now on. He's done with the nonsense and wants a quiet life with her, while she's sacrificing that in order to be great and finally have some power for herself, even if it leads to death and ruin. But in order to achieve this visual, they're just ignoring the reality of the situation. If the gatehouse is burned down, so is the bridge, which means Taigen can't cross it, which means you can't have this scene happen this way. This is supposed to be where the talent comes in, and you figure out a sensible way to make it happen regardless, but they've been skipping that step a lot this episode, when you'd think the final episode of the season is the one you'd really want to nail, since it heavily baits a second season. A single candle caused this in, at most, if I'm being exceedingly generous, an hour. Unless Mizu has been chasing Fowler around for half a day, which, yeah right. The Great Fire of London spread over days, as did this one in real life, and I'm not referencing real life to say you have to stick to the exact timeline as it happened. I'm simply saying that if you're going to depict a great fire in your show, starting and spreading, then it should probably behave like fire does. Especially if it's a plot-relevant fire, because right now, in this episode, the first word that comes to my mind when I think of this fire is nonsense, because that's what it is. This is impossible, and I cannot stand that it acts as the resolution to the main drama of this entire season. Because do not forget, Fowler's entire army is defeated by this fire. The army that has been built up for much of the season. I don't mind if the army is defeated in one episode, I do mind if the army is defeated by bullshit. Why is there Game of Thrones footage here? And finally, one more problem to cap it all off. The show casually skips over how a severely injured Mizu managed to get Fowler out of that inferno and locked up on a ship without him making any more attempts on her life. They also didn't run into any stragglers from Fowler's army. Just lucky, I guess. Real lucky. The rest of this season is by no means perfect, but it is far and away better than this. Just using episode 1 as an example, since pretty much everybody who gave this show a chance will have at least seen episode 1. The first point of... I don't want to call it praise, because this should be the bare minimum. The first point of adequacy is that the progression of events is simply logical. The actions each character takes make sense considering their goals. Let's focus on Mizu though, since she has the most going on this early in the show. Mizu needs to find and kill Abijah Fowler. To find him, she follows and interrogates an infamous slaver with a gun, a weapon that could have only come through Fowler. He directs her to Heiji Shindo, and to get to him she decides to talk to his famous brother. But to get to his brother she has to fight her way through his dojo. Everything follows logically. You could argue it's slightly convenient that Heiji Shindo just so happens to have a famous brother who is easy to find, but that convenience is offset entirely by how difficult it is to get to him. There are many other ways she could have managed it, but Mizu is kind of a brute, especially early on in this season, so intimidation and open combat suit her character the best. And even if you were to accept that it's convenient, it would still be the first instance of any convenience in this story as far as I can tell. There isn't anything significant to criticize about Taigen or Akemi's stories because they're just getting started, and although the vast majority of the episode is given over to Mizu, what happens to them still makes sense. The fight choreography in this episode is also leagues better. In the Shindo-Ryu dojo, during the first encounter, Mizu isn't trying to hurt anyone. She just wants to prove she can. She fights brutally during the second encounter because she wants to draw out more skilled opponents and work her way up the hierarchy. And as a result, most people's first exchange with her is usually also their last, because she's always looking for a quick way to put them out of commission. She targets legs and ankles, she breaks arms and jaws, she rips out teeth, she hits people in the dick, she does this. She fights to win, and there are no obvious awkward pauses where people wait to hit her because she wipes through them so quickly. The only criticism I have for this section is that between shots, these three students' katanas disappear, but I don't care as much as in episode 8, because they never would have beaten her with any melee weapon. Fowler's disappearing katana saves her life. When Taigen joins the fight, his introduction obviously puts him on another level, because he's the only one to land a hit. There are once again no awkward pauses like in their fight with Fowler, and the choreography is inventive. There are plenty of short exchanges, with Mizu slipping strikes as she does, as well as grappling, wrestling, and throws. The actual fight with live blades is short, as it should be when you're dueling with lethal weapons, and both characters show consideration towards the kind of weapon their opponent has and the stance they're in. And none of this is present in episode 8 from either character, which is really odd because Fowler is also using a katana during their fight. I would be fine with this being left out if the choreography had been good, but
it's trash.
Once again, if you didn't have the time to animate this fight scene to the same level of quality as the other duels in the season, then shorten it. Just have them analyze each other's stance in this low fidelity style and cut it down to one short exchange that Fowler escapes from. As far as I can remember, it's not until the final scene of episode 2 that my first significant problem shows up. This is the first time I audibly sighed watching this show, because Mizu surviving this was luck distilled down to its purest liquid form. What I felt I'd learned about the show up to this point was that it was better than this, and until it happened I never would have expected such an easily avoidable flaw to pop up in this show, because I quite enjoyed the first episode. Her surviving this way is immensely unsatisfying because nothing about her cautious nature led to her avoiding that sword. She had no idea they were coming, and if the festival drums hadn't drawn her to her feet at this exact moment, their assassination would have been executed flawlessly, as would she. By and large, this show rises well above this kind of thing. It's a season I can quite happily recommend despite its flaws, but my god, they haven't left my mind since I saw it. Still, the fight that follows is quality. Mizu uses the terrain intelligently to reduce the number of foes that can attack her at any one time, and something I especially like is that the injuries Mizu sustains are placed correctly. Her sword arm is the only one that's injured during this fight, which is why her managing to do this isn't something I question. It's just annoying that this entire fight is the result of the incredible luck of her accidentally avoiding an assassination attempt. However, most of everything between this point and episode 8 is written well, which is why I believe the final episode was rushed. Because it isn't just a dip in quality, it's like a fucking drop off a chasm. And I'm just glad that my appreciation for the rest of the show survived that drop in quality. And fuck episode 8, man. I cannot say it enough. I like this show, but after that episode, I only like it. Thankfully, the main cast in episode 8 are not ruined. Yes, everyone is stupider than they've been previously shown to be, but they are still themselves underneath all that stupidity. Their dialogue is in character, and they take actions that line up with what we know they want, apart from Ringo ditching Akemi, though at the very least he did it for something extremely important. However, my hopes for Season 2 are dangling just a little too precariously for my liking after that finale. There is always the possibility that something behind the scenes is what caused this drop in quality, but a lot of the problems I highlighted are simply the result of bad writing. If this episode were remade now with unlimited time and budget but the same script, it would still be bad. The only differences would be impeccable animation and hopefully better fight choreography. Never make an episode this bad again, please. I've already had more than my fill of seeing shit I like go downhill.
Feels great.
At least I've still got Warrior. Well, I haven't seen Season 3 yet, but I have complete confidence it'll be great, which is sadly not something I can say for the second season of this show anymore.
had that the whole time?
And that's it. Bye.
I have to say, this isn't actually it.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Okay, I promise that one of these days when I make a video and I say that's it, that will actually be it and the video will end.
But it is not this day.
I think For Whom the Bell Tolls is a great song. I like it, but it just really doesn't fit at all. It feels like the showrunners chose it because they like metal, or at the very least Metallica. But why on earth would you choose that song when you could have chosen something more meaningful? For Whom the Bell Tolls is about war, explicitly, modern warfare, and as with many war songs, it's about the massive impending loss of life and sacrifice the men are about to make for a cause they don't even necessarily believe in. I'm sure if you dug deep enough you could draw some kind of connection to Mizu's storyline and character from it, or say that it relates to the people Mizu slaughters this episode. But it's very restrained lyrically. There's only 2 verses, and of them the only connections I could kind of make were very thin. Lines like stiffened wounds test their pride and gone insane from the pain that they surely know For Whom the Bell Tolls could be linked to Mizu in that maybe she feels she's come too far and sacrificed too much to let it go, even if she sees another path. But the rest of it just doesn't fit. At all. Aside from the obvious connections you could make about for whom exactly the bell tolls. So why on earth would you ever choose this song and not one that could connect more personally to Mizu? Trust by Megadeth is right there, man. Even just looking at the chorus of that song, there's stuff you could connect to her. Maybe after everything that's happened, she feels she tricked herself into feeling content with Daichi because she'd never been with anyone romantically before, and now that he's dead, she believes that it was not only a mistake, but that she never really loved him, it was just lust. I'm not saying the showrunners should have used Trust instead, I'm just making the point that there's other metal songs you could have chosen that would have been far more meaningful than For Whom the Bell Tolls. Die Dead Enough would have also worked fine, and taking a look beyond Megadeth for a second, you could have used Alter Bridge, you could have used Avantasia. Despite the fact it's part of a wider narrative, Twisted Mind fits Mizu far better than it has any right to. There's plenty in just those first 2 lines that you could relate to Mizu and how who she is has shaped her life, if it had been used in the show. And not all of the lyrics fit, but at least some of them do, versus fucking Metallica war song for no reason. I mean, the chorus and the end of the song are literally "There's no way out" repeated. If that doesn't both reference and foreshadow Mizu's obsession with revenge damaging and consuming all around her, I don't know what does. One on One by Priest would have also fit great, and if that doesn't work out then a fine backup would be Bloodstained, but based on the lyrics there's an obvious choice between those two. And finally, if you want to be super picky and you desperately want a song that uses repetitive church bells to signify the inevitable approach of death, then Hallowed Be Thy Name is just staring, slightly offended you never considered it. Sure, when it begins it doesn't quite have the intense energy you might want for this fight, but if that's a problem, just increase the tempo and have the vocalist that you already got to re-record the lyrics for the Metallica song speed up when she sings Hallowed Be Thy Name. You don't even have to worry about how it would sound, because the song itself picks up the pace in its second half. It's already done all the work for you, just play double time and tell the vocalist to keep up. As much as I have issues with the show, Stranger Things Season 4 chose Master of Puppets for a reason, not just because it's that Metallica song everyone knows. There are obvious connections that you can make through that song in relation to the characters and the villain, especially the villain. I don't like when things are done without purpose, because more often than not, when it happens, it means an opportunity is being missed. I would love to dig into this song choice, but there's nothing to dig into, so all I have to say about it is, yeah. It's Metallica. I like Metallica, which is all anyone will ever have to say about it. And it would have been so easy to fix, just pick another song. There are so many that would have fit fine, and if the lyrics aren't gonna matter, why have them? Why not just remove them from the mix and have this be an instrumental instead? And honestly, you wouldn't even really need to do that because the first 2 minutes are all instrumental anyway. Alternatively, you could use one of Metallica's actual instrumental tracks. There's literally one on Ride the Lightning you could have used. It's one of my favourite songs. Fuck that ending, though. This was just one of those things that's been bothering me. It's far from a significant issue of any kind, but I couldn't just not include it, especially considering all the suitable song choices just sitting right there. It's just something that had been on my mind, I wanted to get it off my mind, and now that I have, I can finally rest. Yeah, so that's actually it now. Everybody watch Warrior, bye.
Happy fucking New Year.